What if I told you that some of the biggest names in Hollywood paid money to erase themselves from the Diddy documentary? Not rumored, not speculated, paid. And the man who knows exactly who they are? He's finally talking. His name is Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, the guy who saw everything, the parties, the violence, the secrets. And he was supposed to be the star of Netflix's documentary, The Reckoning. But here's the twist. He's not in it. 50 Cent plastered his name all over the promo. Netflix called it unflinching. Critics called it explosive. But Gene Deal? He calls it incomplete. Because according to Gene, the documentary you watched wasn't the documentary that was supposed to exist. Key witnesses were cut, major allegations were softened, and celebrities who partied with Diddy for decades, they vanished like ghosts. Gene says it's simple. These people didn't want their reputations destroyed, so they stayed silent, and allegedly, some of them paid to keep it that way. Today, we're breaking down exactly what Netflix didn't want you to see, the stories that were buried, the names that were scrubbed, and the evidence Gene Deal has been sitting on for 30 years. This isn't gossip. This is a cover-up. Let's expose it. So who is Gene Deal? And why does his voice matter more than anyone else's? Gene wasn't some random employee. He was Diddy's shadow. He traveled with him, protected him, watched every move. He was there during the City College tragedy in 1991, when 9 people died in a stampede. He was there when Wolf Jones, Bad Boy's original head of security, was murdered. He was there when Kim Porter, Diddy's ex and mother of his children, was alive and allegedly terrified. Gene saw the violence, the manipulation, the fear, and he kept receipts. Not metaphorical receipts, actual evidence, tapes, photos, documents. So when 50 Cent announced he was producing a Diddy documentary for Netflix, Gene thought, finally, someone's going to tell the real story. 50 called Gene directly. They talked for 45 minutes. Gene wasn't asking for fame. He wasn't chasing clout. He wanted to bring 2 other witnesses, Tim and Kirk Burroughs. Together, they could paint the full picture. Childhood to empire, success to scandal. Gene even offered a package deal. All 3 men, all their evidence, for just $50,000. That's nothing for a Netflix documentary, especially one that hit #1 globally within 24 hours. But then Gene met the director, Alex Stapleton, and everything fell apart. She told him documentaries don't pay people like that. She said his price was unreasonable. So Gene pulled out invoices, proof that he'd been paid more on past projects. Her response? She accused him of lying. That's when Gene asked her the question that ended the conversation. Who do you think you're talking to? This is a man who risked his life protecting one of the most dangerous figures in hip-hop. A man who watched celebrities cry, rappers die, and secrets pile up like bodies. And now some Hollywood director was treating him like a liar? Gene walked, and he took his evidence with him. But here's the part that should terrify you. The director told Gene that 50 Cent doesn't control the documentary. His name is just being used for marketing. Netflix controls the narrative. Netflix decides what stays and what gets cut. And according to Gene, they cut the most important parts. So what did Netflix leave out? What stories were too dangerous to tell? That's what we're unpacking next. Gene Deal says the documentary missed the most important story in Bad Boy's history. The story that explains how Diddy built his empire. And it starts with one man, Kirk Burroughs. Kirk wasn't just an employee at Bad Boy Records. He owned 25% of the company. Diddy owned the other 75%. But here's the trick. Diddy didn't put the company in his own name. He put everything under his mother, Janice Combs. Why? Because Diddy knew lawsuits were coming. He knew the City College tragedy would haunt him. He knew people would try to take everything. So on paper, Diddy owned nothing. And if you own nothing, no one can take anything from you. But then Diddy wanted Kirk's 25% too. And according to Kirk, Diddy didn't ask nicely. Kirk claims Diddy showed up with a baseball bat and threatened him until he signed over his shares. Kirk says he had no choice, sign or face the consequences. Years later, Kirk tried to sue. He wanted his ownership back. He wanted the truth out there. But the court dismissed the case. Too much time had passed. The statute of limitations protected Diddy. Netflix mentioned this story. but only for like 30 seconds. Gene says they didn't explain the strategy behind it. They didn't show how Diddy used fear and legal loopholes to steal an empire. They made it sound like a business dispute. Gene says it was extortion. And that's just the beginning. Because the next story Gene wanted in the documentary, it involves a murder. A murder Gene believes Diddy is directly connected to. His name was Anthony Wolf Jones, and Gene says Wolf's story changes everything. Wolf wasn't just security, he was Bad Boy's head of security from day one. Before the record deals, before Clive Davis, before the fame, Wolf was there. He financed Diddy's early moves. He kept Biggie and Craig Mack around when Diddy had no money. Wolf was a founder. And because of that, Wolf knew everything. Where the money went, who got paid off, what happened at private parties. The secrets nobody could say out loud. Gene says Wolf had enough information to destroy people. And then, Wolf was eliminated, shot and killed, by someone connected to BMF, the Black Mafia family, one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in hip-hop history. Gene Deal says there's a direct link between Wolf's murder and Diddy. But if you watch the Netflix documentary, they barely mention Wolf. They show a couple photos. They say he was a security guard, and then they move on, like he didn't matter.
Gene believes that was intentional, because telling Wolf's full story means exposing a chain of events that connects Bad Boy Records, BMF, and an unsolved murder that still haunts people in the industry. Netflix didn't want that smoke. Even 50 Cent, who's never been afraid to call people out, stayed away from this part. The details are too heavy, the people involved are too dangerous, and the consequences are too real. But Gene says Wolf's story needs to be told, because Wolf's death wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck. It was connected to everything else. The power, the secrets, the fear, the empire Diddy built behind Bad Boy Records. And leaving it out of the documentary wasn't just an oversight. Gene calls it a cover-up. Now let's talk about the City College tragedy, because the documentary did cover this. But Gene says they told the safe version, not the real version. It was December 28, 1991. Diddy organized a celebrity charity basketball game at City College in New York. Heavy D was involved, Mike Tyson, LL Cool J, big celebrities, big hype. The venue was packed. Gene's security team was supposed to handle crowd control. He had 18 men ready, dogs, gates, a full system. Gene knew how wild Harlem crowds could get when big names showed up. He was prepared. But the day before the event, Diddy came to Gene with news. Heavy D didn't want his security anymore. Just like that, they were fired. No outside security, no crowd control, no backup plan. So when the event started, chaos erupted immediately. Thousands of people tried to push into a building that couldn't hold them. And when Mike Tyson and LL Cool J walked through the main entrance instead of the back door, the crowd exploded. People surged forward, bodies pushed into a narrow stairwell. People started falling. Others tripped on top of them. Panic spread faster than anyone could react. But here's the part the documentary didn't tell you. The part Gene says is the most important detail. One of the event promoters was a woman named Jessica Rosenblum. She was working directly with Diddy and Heavy D. When she saw the crowd surging, she panicked. But not for the people, for the money box, the cash from ticket sales. Gene says Jessica grabbed the money and locked the door at the bottom of the stairwell. She locked it to protect the cash. And when she locked that door, she trapped hundreds of people inside with no way out. 9 people died there. 9 young people crushed to death. Because a door meant to protect money became a barrier that blocked their escape. Gene tried to reach the stairwell, but the crowd was too thick. He had to run around the gym, find another entrance, and start opening doors from the inside. By the time he got there, it was too late. Gene performed CPR on a 17-year-old boy. The boy didn't make it. His older brother was there crying. He said something Gene never forgot. "This is the first time I ever took my little brother anywhere. My mama is going to kill me." Gene witnessed all of this. He saw the bodies. He knows exactly who locked that door and why people died that night. But Jessica Rosenblum was never charged. She was mentioned in a few old news reports, and then she quietly disappeared from the story. No investigation, no trial, no accountability.
The documentary talked about City College, but they focused on Diddy and Heavy D. They never explained why Gene's security was fired. They never explained the locked door. And they never mentioned Jessica Rosenblum's role at all. Gene says he tried to tell this story on camera, but it never made the final cut. And that's why he believes viewers still don't know the full truth. So why did Netflix leave all of this out? Gene has a theory, and it's darker than you think. Gene says A-list celebrities paid to stay out of the documentary. Not with official contracts, but with pressure, with lawyers, with quiet threats behind the scenes. Think about every celebrity who went to Diddy's parties. Athletes, actors, singers, superstars. None of them were mentioned in the documentary, not a single one. Netflix acted like 50 random people were the only ones around Diddy for 30 years. But everyone knows that's not true. So why didn't they appear? Gene says it's simple: money and reputation. These people don't want to be tied to allegations. They don't want to be connected to scandals or lawsuits. So they stayed silent, and the documentary stayed selective. When Marlon Wayans was asked if he watched the documentary, he said he didn't and probably never will. He called it a narrative. He said people can be programmed. He didn't say Diddy was innocent. He didn't say the documentary was wrong. He just said it was a narrative. Gene says comments like that come from people who know things, but don't want to say them publicly. Because speaking out means becoming part of the story. And once you're part of the story, lawyers get involved. Depositions happen, questions get asked. And for celebrities worth hundreds of millions of dollars, that's not a risk they're willing to take. But here's where it gets even messier. The footage in the Netflix documentary. The private video of Diddy in his hotel room after Cassie sued him. The conversations with his lawyer. The scenes of him trying to figure out his next move. That footage did not belong to Netflix. A videographer recorded it for Diddy. There were NDAs, contracts, confidentiality agreements. Yet somehow, 50 Cent got his hands on it. Diddy's lawyers threatened Netflix immediately. They said the footage was stolen. Netflix said they got it legally, but they won't say how. And 50 Cent won't talk about it either. Gene has a theory. Diddy has a pattern of not paying people. Maybe the videographer wasn't paid. Maybe someone leaked it. Maybe someone sold it. But that footage changed the entire documentary. It made people see Diddy in a way they never had before. And that's the power of evidence. Real evidence. Not speculation. Not rumors.
Actual footage that can't be denied. Gene says if he had been part of the documentary, it would have been completely different. It would have been raw. It would have been dangerous. It would have exposed everything, not just what was safe to release. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows who was paid off. He knows who was protected. And he knows who was scared. The documentary you saw is a blockbuster. It hit #1. People talked about it for weeks. But Gene says the real story hasn't been told yet. Not even close. Let's talk about the footage that changed everything. The private video of Diddy in his hotel room. The one where he's on the phone with his lawyers, panicking, strategizing, trying to figure out how to handle Cassie's lawsuit. That footage wasn't public. It wasn't leaked by accident. It was recorded by a professional videographer who worked directly for Diddy. And there were legal protections in place. NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, confidentiality clauses. The kind of contracts that come with serious consequences if you break them. So how did 50 Cent get it? How did Netflix get permission to use it? And why hasn't anyone been sued yet? Gene Deal has a simple answer. Diddy didn't pay people. And when you don't pay people, loyalty disappears. Fast. The videographer had leverage. He had footage that could destroy Diddy's public image. And maybe, just maybe, he decided that footage was worth more than the paycheck Diddy never gave him. 50 Cent won't talk about how he got it. When TMZ asked him directly, he smiled and said, "You're a journalist. You wouldn't reveal your sources either." Netflix claims they obtained the footage legally, but they refuse to explain the process. Diddy's lawyers immediately threatened a lawsuit. They said the footage was stolen property, but nothing happened. No lawsuit, no court case, just silence. Gene says that silence tells you everything.
Because if Diddy really had a legal case, he would have sued, immediately, aggressively, the way he's sued people in the past. But he didn't, which means either the footage was obtained legally, or Diddy knows that fighting it in court would expose even more damaging information. Either way, that footage changed the documentary. It gave viewers something they'd never seen before. Diddy vulnerable, Diddy scared, Diddy human. And that's what made the documentary successful. Not the interviews, not the testimonies. The raw, unfiltered footage of a man realizing his empire was collapsing in real time. Gene believes there's more footage out there, more private recordings, more moments that were captured but never released. And he thinks 50 Cent has access to some of it. Because 50 isn't just producing a documentary. Gene says 50 is building a case. A public case that could influence legal proceedings down the line. And part 2 of the documentary? Gene says it's going to be even darker. More witnesses, more allegations, more names that were protected them. First time around. The question is, will Netflix let 50 tell the full story this time? Or will the same celebrities who stayed silent in part 1 pay to stay silent again? So where does this leave us? Gene Deal walked away from the Netflix documentary, but he didn't walk away from the story. He's been doing interviews,